Will arrive by Armageddon. Few survive. You must get oil and trim your lamps, 'cause you won't get a second chance. It's prophesied, when those four horsemen start their ride. There's pain and death on every side when those four horsemen start their ride.
If we get a copyright strike for that, I'm gonna be so mad. Last time
that's what brings us down.
Well, last time we had Michael on, the stupid CNN clip took the whole show.
Oh, that's right.
Oh my gosh.
We had, Michael, last time you were on, first off, it was one of the, I think it might be my favorite show we've ever done, where we got into the whole, about the myth of creation.
Oh, yeah.
And we talked about Pangea and all that stuff. And the video had such momentum. It was like at the end of the night, like when I went to bed, it was a couple of thousand views. I woke up the next day, it was gone. And then they just cut it because that stupid CNN clip, and we had to repost it later. I mean, it picked up steam again, but not once you kill that momentum, it just totally destroys it. We finally got local streams back because we used them up all last month, and we never actually did a locals only stream. So tonight on locals, we're going to probably discuss the state of the Catholic apostolate. We were talking in the green room, just with all the church militant stuff, with all the coalition stuff. We're just going to talk about the state of the Catholic apostolate and just add a couple of things in. We're also going to get Michael's perspective on co-sleeping. We're not going to go to co-sleeping. But tonight, I wanted to get Michael on. We've never actually had him on. Well, first off, hit like and subscribe. And Rob, make sure you remind me to do the ad read. And before we get to
in a
Michael,
couple of minutes.
All right. Why don't we do some? We have some new Apple reviews, don't we?
We'll read the Apple reviews, and then you can do the ad read.
All right, and then we'll get into, because I want to get into some Lepanto stuff,
some actual Lepanto stuff, and
actual
not Pangea.
And then we want to talk about the nature of Marxism and stuff. We got a lot in store for tonight's show. So, all right, if anyone speaks about sleeping, let them be. Yeah, we've come to the conclusion we're not touching parenting advice ever.
It's just not for the best.
No.
Okay, so let me pull up some Apple reviews. You know, Anthony, you always say if we can't laugh at ourselves, then who can we laugh at? Well, this one's pretty bad. And I'm going to let you read this one.
All right. Anthony and Rob are such a cute couple. They are an inspiration that distance relationships are truly possible. I'm not even going to say that. No. The magnetism these two exude is palpable in their podcast. You really feel the love they have for each other in all their episodes. Those who judge their lifestyle choices are despicable.
Despicable.
Father James Martin says that these two boys can love each other, and I agree. I love the love that Rob and Anthony share, and I love them for this lovely love. This is sick. These manly men are the hardest thing to hit the internet. Can't wait to see them on my Bud Light can kisses. That's sick.
I like how you got reduced to Ant and Rob.
Man. All right. There was all right, but 5 stars. That's all we care about. We said you guys can say whatever you want as long as it's 5 stars. So
you do have to get past the Apple censors though, so good luck with that.
Yeah. So it's like according Babylon is avoiding Babylon. I bet that's a typo. Avoiding Babylon is like stumbling onto a group of trad Catholic friends battling it out over some theological controversy at the back table of your beloved neighborhood pizza joint with great beer and pizza, or a real life Lord of the Rings fellowship. Is this a nice one?
This is a nice one.
This is nice.
Well, just keep reading. Mostly like The Hobbit, when the dwarves come over and invade Bilbo's house.
Okay. All right. At least a punch in there. All right. Great guests and regulars, hilarious hosts. Topics so important that they are literally life and soul death Watch now before the apocalypse hits. On a serious note, Lord God, please help us and guide us. Thank you for good Catholic friends, both in person and online. Viva Cristo Rey, Blessed Mother Mary, and Saint Joseph, pray for us. Thank you, Antonia. That's a very nice one. There was... All right, let's see. I recently decided to try an episode of Avoiding Babylon as it was assaulting my YouTube feed with its abuse of the algorithm. Huge mistake. Now I'm questioning most of my life to either watch Dancing with the Stars with my wife or simply watch 2 hours worth of wash 2 hours worth of dishes in silence. If I have to listen to Anthony pump up hype for his Danielic mystery series, what's up?
You say that all the time.
If I have to listen to Anthony pump up or hype this Danielic mystery series one more time, I'll throw my phone in the middle of Lake Ontario and throw myself in after it. Here's the Danielic mystery. How does this channel have more than 3 followers? Big folks. 5 stars. There we go. That's a perfect. That is a perfect Apple iTunes review. You want to read this one, Rob?
Sure. Much to say. There's too much to say for one review. I've lost so many brain cells listening to this podcast. I now find Disney-made Star Wars films and shows to be entertaining. I'm not sure what is worse, Anthony's ability to make Eric Sammons laugh or his ability to get Michael Knowles on the show. Neither of which have happened is the point, by the way, everyone. I used to think everyone from Minnesota was a everyone from Minnesota was a moron, considering they gave us Governor Jesse Ventura and Senator Al Franken. Okay, that's fair enough. Rob is from Minnesota, so I guess I'm wrong about Minnesota. Rob being the one smart Minnesotan is like saying a broken clock is correct twice a day. Anyway, thanks for dying of laughter, Anthony, when I called you the situation. I had an awkward time explaining to a priest in confession how I violated the 5th commandment.
So basically, here's the deal. You guys can leave a review on iTunes for us. You can trash us, make fun of us. As long as you leave 5 stars, we're happy. The last one that somebody left was actually just like a good one, but this one's funny too. I don't know who is harder to listen to. Anthony, who sounds like my 60-year-old pot-smoking aunt who is an ELCA deaconess, or Rob, who sounds like Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey, but somehow more monotone. One is leading because of narcolepsy, and the other one sounds like he's about to explain why marijuana isn't a drug and ask him for $10 a can. I guess I'll have to keep listening until I come to a conclusion. Thanks, guys. Yeah, man, we got funny listeners, man. We also have a voicemail. If you guys want to leave us a voicemail, what is that, Rob?
I haven't read this one yet. This one's like legit nice, kind of.
Yeah. That's what I mean. This was the latest one. It was just nice. So we
appreciate.
We appreciate them, but they're not good for the bit. So we have a voicemail. If you guys want to leave a voicemail, what's the voicemail, Rob?
Let me pull that up here. It is 27973 avoid.
That's it. 279. Oh, did I get that right? 279-73 avoid. You guys can leave us a voicemail. If it's funny, we will play it on air. I'm going to read the ad read real quick, which last time we read the ad read, I got in trouble.
Before you do the ad read, can I read something to you?
Of course. Please.
So this is my review, and it comes. This is my review, but it comes from G.K. Chesterton.
Okay. This is gonna be harsh.
The greenhorn is the ultimate victor in everything. It is he that gets the most out of life. Because Pickwick is led away by Jingle, he will be led to the Whit Hart Inn and see the only Weller cleaning boots in the courtyard. Because he is bamboozled by Dodson and Fogg, he will enter the prison house like a paladin and rescue the man and the woman who have wronged him most. His soul will never starve for exploits or excitements, who is wise enough to be made a fool of. He will make himself happy in the traps that have been laid for him. He will roll in their nets and sleep. All doors fly open to him who has a mildness more defiant than mere courage. The whole is unerringly expressed in one fortunate phrase. He will always be taken in. To be taken in everywhere is to see the inside of everything. It is the hospitality of circumstance. With torches and trumpets, like a guest, the greenhorn is taken in by life, and the skeptic is cast out by it. And the two of you remind me of the greenhorn. The other way that I heard it put was bold and stupid men.
Well, you were asking how me and Rob like came together, and I mean we've told it on air, so I apologize to everybody who's heard the story a bunch of times. But I started this channel. It was really just like a stand against the mandate. I wanted to like inspire other people to not get the jab when it came out. That was my first video. Then I put something humorous out, and then I started a Catholic trivia show, and Rob was the first guest on the trivia show. And I had such good chemistry with him on the trivia show that I just called him the next morning and I was like,
at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
On a Saturday.
On a Saturday, I was at work and I called him, woke him up.
I was in bed. I was not at work.
And I just said, I'm like, you want to just do this with me? And he was like, yeah. And like, we started doing trivia, and then we would add a guest in once in a while. And then it just kind of developed into what it is today. And we've just developed a friendship over time. We almost had a divorce on our last episode or so, but it's been people were very nervous about that. I'm like, brothers fight, guys, relax, don't worry, everything's gonna be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Bold and stupid. Yeah.
All right, let's do the ad read that I got in trouble for last time because it was so unprofessional that
off to a great start this time. Good job.
They were like, I was like, no, that wasn't what I was going for. I was trying to make it humorous and make it part of the show. And we talked about them for 5 minutes instead of 30 seconds. So, but okay, I have nothing related to say. So I learned to do dolly zooms with AI tools. Okay,
thanks, Thursday.
He always puts in a super chat. I got to appreciate Thursdays. Like the only one of our viewers who's not cheap. All right, so I gotta throw them under the bus occasionally. All right, we want to tell you about our first sponsor, mycatholicwill.com. My Catholic Will was founded by two Catholic brothers who had spent their entire career working for the church at various shrines and dioceses across the country. A few years ago, they started to think about how they could have the biggest impact possible for the church and fellow Catholics. They realized they wanted to leave a legacy of faith. Well over 50% of adults in the U.S. don't have a will, including many of you watching now. That's scary because it leaves you at risk of having your property and resources going to the state rather than to the people and organizations that matter to you most. Just as a side note, like I know people who haven't made wills, and it is a disaster. It's one of the most important things you can do.
Probate court is miserable.
Yep. Yeah. So, my partner with they partner with local parishes, high schools, colleges, dioceses, and the national Catholic charitable organizations to encourage
such
Catholics,
as Lepanto Institute, right?
That's true. Yeah, I think he actually has that listed. So to take care of their families and leave a portion of their legacy to organizations that will carry faith into the next century. For just $80, you can write a legal will in as little as 20 minutes that is valid in all 50 states. You can add a mirror will to your spouse for less than $40, and you can make changes or updates for free at any time. It's an incredible value for Catholics and their families. But it gets better. For a limited time, our audience can support our show and save 20% off your purchase by entering referral code AB20 when you create your account before you check out. So they gave us, Rob and I, our own wills. We both filled them out. So My Catholic Will exists to hand on the light of faith to the next generation through online self-help forums and templates, along with educational content from a Catholic perspective. My Catholic Will is not a law firm and does not provide any legal services or legal advice and is not a substitute for an attorney. So go check out mycatholicwill.com, use code AB20, and now back to the show. Michael, so you sent me this last story you broke at Lepanto, and I've just been really thinking about how much you have shaped how I donate to the church. I only write checks specifically for things in the church. I go and I ask the priest what repairs need to be done, and I'll write something towards that fund. I never give to that second collection because that second collection is always for the CCHD.
Right.
What is going on with this most recent thing you figured out?
So I think we kind of have to go back a little bit. People need to understand what the CCHD is and where it came from. The Catholic Campaign for Human Development was created in 1969 by a Monsignor Jack Egan, who was a priest of the Archdiocese of Chicago. He was good friends with Saul Alinsky. That name should be familiar to everybody. Saul Alinsky wrote Rules for Radicals. He dedicated it to Lucifer. He was a Marxist. Okay. Saul Alinsky was a socialist. He promoted Marxist revolution. Everything in Rules for Radicals was predicated on the idea that there should be perpetual revolution. So taking from the haves, giving to the have-nots. And it was just in perpetuity. And he propagated the idea of the ends justifies the means. So anyway, that was Rules for Radicals. He went to Jack Egan and he said, I'm having a hard time actually raising funds for my community organizing groups. I can't seem to get anything done. And Monsignor Jack Egan said, you know what? We take up collections for all kinds of things around the diocese. Maybe we could take up a collection for your community organizing group called the Industrial Areas Foundation. So that's what they did. They took up a collection in the Archdiocese of Chicago, and it was a big success. They collected a ton of money. Well, while that was going on, Father Joseph Bernardin, who later became Cardinal Bernardin, but Father Joseph Bernardin became the Secretary General of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. At that time, it was called the National Conference of Catholic Bishops. And he promoted this idea that we really ought to take up a large collection because it was such a big success in Chicago. We should take up a large collection for these community organizing groups around the country. And the bishops, it was sold to them like, we need to help the poor, but we need to help the poor in such a way that we're not just giving them food or giving them shelter. We don't want to look down on them. We want to help raise them up. So it was sold as a new way of helping the poor. We're going to give them a leg up so that they can go out into the world and hold their heads high and not be poor anymore and learn how not to be poor. That was how it was sold, but that's not what it is. The bishops of the United States said, this is a great idea. Let's do it. They took up a massive collection and they started giving money to the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. It was the single largest collection that the USCCB had ever conducted. And they said, that was such a big success, we'll do it again. And then it became a regular thing. Now, the community organizing groups that got funding from the Campaign for Human Development are Marxist agitprop organizations. In other words, what they do is they go into a community and they start agitating. They just get people all riled up.
This is from its inception. It was doing this.
Yes.
I thought it was like once good and then kind of got sullied after time. I had no idea this was from the beginning.
Yep. I have an article on my website called The Marxist Core of the CCHD, or the Marxist Core of the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. And I went through how to identify a front organization, a communist front organization. Communist front organizations were the brainchild of Stalin, Joseph Stalin. And he said, you know what, we need to, if we want to get into any of these communities, we have to create fronts that, they look like it's like a storefront. That's why it's called a front organization. So they have a storefront that says, oh, we're just a print shop. We're just printing paper for whatever. And behind the scenes, they have a bunch of commies who are not associated with the Communist Party, because if they get arrested and they get identified as a communist member, well, then the whole operation falls apart. No, they're just sympathizers. And these communist sympathizers run the print shop and they start recruiting people, or they start putting out propaganda, or they start agitating. So that's how a front group works. The CCHD is financing front organizations throughout the country. They are called community organizing groups. And what these community organizing groups do, they'll start off something small, like, this intersection doesn't have a stoplight. And we need to have a stoplight because a kid was hit by a car here last week. And we need to get mad about this. We need to change things. So they'll start agitating. They get people marching around saying, you didn't put a stoplight here because we're a poor community and you don't care about us. And that's why you need to put in a stoplight. So they come up with that kind of rhetoric and they build an organization around that issue. Well, and a lot of times they'll be successful. They'll get a stoplight that they were looking for, but they have to keep up the outrage. and they'll find some other issue, and they'll turn to the same people that they built this organization around. And they'll say, here's something else for us to be outraged about. Let's do something about that. So then they start perpetuating this injustice outrage. I call it rage porn. And they go through and they start getting people irritated and agitated. And that's when they start advocating for social change. We need to change the system. We need to change our politicians. We need to get somebody in office who cares about us. That's what they do. Barack Obama came out of this system. He was an executive director for the Gamaliel Foundation, which was one of the children of Saul Alinsky's community organizing groups. And there are others, but the bottom line is that from the very beginning, this is the kind of organization that was getting money from the CCHD. They never once did anything to actually help the poor, but they keep billing themselves as an anti-poverty organization. Fast forward. During the 1980s, the 1990s, organizations like Capital Research Center and The Wanderer and Los Pequeños Pauper, which is run by my friend Stephanie Block down in Arizona, they had been exposing organizations receiving funding from the CCHD for 20 years. And a lot of times, because there was no internet at the time, they had to go on location. They had to gather tangible evidence. And then they would.
The Wanderer, the remnant, is that the remnant in the Wanderer?
There was the Wanderer, which had been around since the 1800s. My great grandfather used to read Der Wanderer when it was originally published in German. And the remnant split away from it after the Second Vatican Council. Yeah. And the thing is that they couldn't get quite the traction that they needed in order to make things change. They would tell Catholics in the pews, say, hey, don't give to this organization because this is what's going on. And they would go to their bishop, and the bishop would ask questions at the CCHD, and the USCCB would say, we looked into it. It's not a big deal. Oh, maybe every once in a while there's an organization that slips through the cracks and they're not doing the right thing, but we've defunded them and taken care of it, and that's not a problem anymore. This has been their constant drumbeat for 50 years.
Yeah.
It never changes. Now, I started investigating CCHD back in 2010. And I produced a series of reports. What made this different is the internet. First of all, everybody puts everything on the internet. It's so easy to figure out who someone is or what an organization does or what they're up to just by reading their own literature. You go to their websites, you go to their social media pages, you watch their videos and watch their interviews. You go to news sources and you start reading articles about what are they participating in? What marches are they marching with? You know, that kind of thing. And we started finding CCHD organizations were involved in the promotion of abortion, contraception, homosexuality, actual communism. And I put out a series of reports. And again, because of the internet, I wasn't just sitting there holding a newsletter and going into pews and handing them out and only reaching a couple hundred people. I was actually reaching thousands and thousands of people because of YouTube.
What made you even decide that you were going to look into this yourself? Because you said these other organizations were checking this out. Is that what inspired you? Or was it like an article you read, or?
No, I was working at American Life League at the time, and I was doing what was called the American Life League Report. It was a popular on YouTube series that I did, where I would go in and I would investigate organizations that were involved with Planned Parenthood, or I would expose something Planned Parenthood was doing that was disgusting.
What year was this?
Gosh, this would have been 2010 through 2014.
So like YouTube's really just starting to pop off.
Oh, yeah.
And like, oh man, that must have been exciting.
Oh, it was. I mean, we were right there on the cutting edge. And because you didn't have all the censorship, you didn't have all the, they said something we need to cover up. It was really an open forum. Same thing with Facebook, same thing with Twitter. So we had like this narrow window of opportunity where we were able to get the word out in a very big, very broad way. Because of that, suddenly the CCHD had to scramble And they were like, oh my gosh, he's showing screenshots of these
Yeah.
organizations and what they're doing. And he's got underlines, he's got big arrows pointing to the evidence, and he's got links to all of the evidence. And they started panicking. It started with the organizations just deleting all of the information off their websites and taking down their social media feeds and all that kind of stuff. But then after a while, they're like, well, we're caught. He's got pictures of it. What, we can't do anything. So I wound up having meetings with people over at the CCHD to talk about this kind of stuff. And the CCHD, boy, they know how to draw out a meeting so that they can say a lot of words without saying anything at all.
Michael, is that does anybody know if this is the same as the Bishop Services Appeal?
No, that's something different. Bishop Services Appeal is usually a diocesan collection that has to do with diocesan programs. CCHD might be linked into that somehow. It depends on the diocese. So I can't really say for sure, even on a particular diocese, whether it does that or not. But I'm just wary of any collection like this anymore.
Yeah, me too.
So the story that's all background. Yeah. That's a long lead in, but that's all background to what we found. And this latest report that I did, let me be clear. I have seen the absolute worst of humanity. I have seen just vile things with regard to the LGBT movement. I've seen terrible, terrible pictures of abortion, and I know what happens in an abortion. I've seen it all. And every once in a while I see something that makes me ill. What I reported in this report made me physically ill. I felt horribly sick as I was doing this research. And the reason is this organization called Planting Justice, they got $120,000 from the CCHD. They actually, in 2013, set up a pagan altar with a pagan idol on there. They had pentagrams on this altar, and they recited prayers to demons in remembrance of Transgender Day of Remembrance. And these prayers, I mean, they were praying to Baphomet. They were praying to, what's his name? Hermaphroditus. Okay. Who is, that's where we get the word hermaphrodite.
Who is in control of deciding who gets these grants? I mean, this is because I think I remember early on when you were doing this, you would get some lip service where they would act like they were doing something about it, right?
Yeah.
But it seems like now they just don't even care if you report on it. And
sure. Well, so back in November, or I'm sorry, back in September, I sent letters to every bishop in the country with about 80 pages worth of documentation showing what CCHD was funding. And I asked the bishop, please conduct a third-party investigation of the CCHD. Don't just take my word for it, but do a third-party investigation. Call for a third-party investigation. And withdraw from the CCHD collection until you get straight answers. And Bishop Timothy Sr., who is the chairman of the CCHD subcommittee, he sent a letter to all of his brother bishops, and he told them that, well, CCHD staff looked into these concerns from the Lepanto Institute, and we've discovered that they are unfounded. So our evidence, according to him, is unfounded. And then he said this, he said, all of the initiatives that are supported with CCHD funding have undergone a thorough application process, which includes the approval of the local bishop and the National Subcommittee of Bishops, and are closely monitored throughout the length of their grant to ensure that the terms of the grant agreement are strictly followed. What he said there in that letter is actually an indictment. It's not a defense. He's indicting everybody who conducted this research. What we found about Planting Justice was from 2013. If they actually conducted any kind of investigation into this organization, they would have known exactly what Planting Justice did in 2013. We found it in minutes of starting our investigation.
Yeah. If you think about, all right, you use the break story saying the CCHD is giving they're giving a grant to this organization who supports giving out condoms in Africa. Like that would be like whoa, I can't believe they're doing that. We're talking about an idol of Baphomet on an altar that they're actually doing demon worship at this point. Like this is you could not find something more antithetical to Catholicism than this, and this is where our money is going.
That's exactly it. And that's exactly where I'm coming from with this report. It's like this organization, and it's not like that was the only thing they did. We found that they had been promoting transgenderism as a cross issue with their agricultural stuff from the very beginning. In 2013, they were promoting something called eco-queer movements, where they wanted to have these LGBTQ farms. And it was all wrapped up in some sort of strange mysticism that, you know, well, I mean, wherever you find sodomy, you always find the occult.
Yeah.
But they would wrap it up in that, and throughout they were constantly, all their social media, everything on their regular website was all promoting transgender this and transgender that. One of the last things that they promoted, which was back in March, they posted this image, Peace Out Loud, and it says Spring 2023 Anti-Racist Course Catalog. And one of the things that it says is building anti-racist, queer and trans non-monogamy. Let me translate. That means that they're advocating for polyamory among the LGBTQ community, which is grossly immoral. I mean, hugely immoral. So if they wanted to say, well, you know, that happened back in 2013, it was such a long time ago. Well, from my perspective, if somebody's going to worship demons during a staff meeting in their own staff offices, they're off limits from now on. They're forbidden from any Catholic funds. But it's not like that was the one and done. It was constant throughout the entire history of their organization. We found tons of information showing, yes, they've been promoting this nastiness since the beginning. They're still doing it. And they got a grant from the CCHD, $120,000. I'll bet you guys could do a lot with $120,000.
Man, it's just it's so crazy when you think about we're supposed to give to our church. Like if you have a good parish, you want to make sure that your parish is enabled to continue on doing what it's doing. Because if a parish, you can't just not donate, right? Because you can't leave your parish with their hands.
Sure, you have an obligation. It's one of the precepts of the church. You have an obligation to financially support the church.
Absolutely, and it's at a point where you want your community to thrive, especially if you have a solid community. But if they're a diocesan, I mean, I go to a diocesan Latin mass. I don't go to a fraternity or anything. So they pass that CCHD basket around, and it's just at a point. But I do see people starting to hesitate now, and I really do think it's because of the awareness that people are getting because of all the things that you've done over the years.
Well, I do hope so, and I think that. See, this is the other problem. The USCCB is it's not only a tax exempt organization, it's identified by the IRS as a religion. And as a religion, the USCCB doesn't have to actually reveal any of its financial transactions. So we don't know how much the CCHD is collecting as opposed to how much they're distributing in funds. We know how much they're distributing in funds. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that the vast majority of Americans in this country have realized just how awful the CCHD is, and at best they collect $1,000, and yet they're still giving $10 million a year to these other organizations. That would mean they're pulling from the general fund. That would mean that they're pulling from other resources within their organization in order to meet the balanced budget that they want, and they don't have to report that. So we don't know whether the donations are down or whether they're not using the funds according to what the donations were. We have no idea.
Even the conflict of interest that the bishops have with the immigration issue, it's such a conflict of interest they have, because they're getting grants from the government so that they can work these programs for immigrants coming in. Plus, it's also staffing their parishes because they're hoping they're Catholic families coming in, and they know people are leaving the church in droves. So it's almost like an active undermining of the stability of our country through the work that they're doing. It's crazy, the things that are going on right now.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly what's going on. There's another element to this too. Catholic Relief Services, which is an official project of the USCCB, every year it lobbies Congress to increase funding to USAID, to PEPFAR, to the Global Fund. Okay. Those three organizations that I just named are the single largest providers of contraception in the entire world. Those three organizations. CRS gets massive grants from PEPFAR, the Global Fund, and USAID. Now, I have found programs where they were actively involved in the promotion of contraception through those grants as a condition of the grant.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things that I found is that CRS implemented a program called Dreams, which was a PEPFAR funded project. And the basic core package of deliverables for Dreams is an increased contraceptive mix among young girls. And CRS in their own literature said, well, we carved out this little section that we're doing in this program, but we're not actively touching the contraception. Our hands aren't getting dirty with the contraception. We're just making sure that the girls are enrolled, and then we send them over to the other organizations that do provide that contraception to them. So it's kind of like, well, I'm not dealing drugs. I'm just the principal of this organization, and I see the drug dealer over there, and if you want drugs, that's where to get them.
How do you do this work without getting just
Incredibly
black-pilled on-
jaded.
Yeah, incredibly jaded, black-pilled on everything, like without getting hopeless, man. It's depressing in some ways, and you wonder, how the heck are we getting out of this?
Should a cancer patient be depressed because they have a cancer diagnosis?
No. Well,
what if you've been sick for over a decade and you keep going to doctors and they're constantly trying to figure out what the problem is, and you can't ever get a straight answer, and the doctors can't find the problem, but you are sick. You know you have issues. You every day you wake up and it's agony. And then one day, one doctor takes a look at you. He goes through all of your paperwork and he says, I finally figured out what the problem is, and then names the issue.
yeah.
Is the person that day going to be excited, or are they going to be depressed?
Well, at least you know now what you have to treat, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think that the reason that I don't get upset is that I'm trying to help people understand what the problem is and why things are the way they are. We have a serious problem in the church. We have a cancer in the church. It's called Marxism. It's permeated everything. Marxism is in modernism. It's in the liturgy. It's in the way we even conceive of what charity is. Everything that we eat, live, and breathe is inundated with Marxist ideologies, and we don't even realize it.
When do you think that started happening in the church?
In the church? Well, if you want to go way back, you can take a look at the Alta Vendita, which is the Masonic blueprint that talked about how they were going to infiltrate the church and start creating these ideologies within the church. And we have to understand that communism is the outgrowth of Freemasonry.
Mhm.
People don't understand that. They don't realize that Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels were contacted by a league of Freemasons in London. And
Yeah.
they approached him and said, look, we want you to write a manifesto that expresses what we believe.
The high-ranking Freemasons like Adam Weishaupt were proto-socialists. They believed in a universal republic, like
Right.
communism.
Adam Weishaupt, who started the Illuminati in 1776, succeeded by Giuseppe Mazzini. And Mazzini and Pike were involved, and Pike was involved with Karl Marx. I mean, so they're all part of the same, they're all cut from the same cloth. But communism is the outward expression of the philosophy of Freemasonry. So if you understand what Freemasonry is, you'll understand what communism is. And then you'll see throughout the late 1800s, early 1900s, there were communist radicals that were starting to join seminaries, started with Freemasons, joining the seminaries, and then perverting the theological approach of the church. In fact, the Nouveau Théologie is an outgrowth of Enlightenment thinking, which is a direct descendant of Freemasonry. Okay. So the Nouveau Théologie is where we get a lot of the modernism that has infiltrated our church. And then aside from that, in the 1920s, so the communist revolution took place in 1917, but there were socialist uprisings throughout the mid 1800s. Okay, after the Communist Manifesto was published, you had all kinds of Marxist uprisings that were overturning the monarchies of Europe. And people don't think about that aspect of it, but the revolution started way back.
Yeah,
So,
1848, there was revolutions all across Europe.
that's right. And they were sparked by communists.
Mhm.
Okay, so the establishment of the republics and the nation states of Europe, completely man-made, not organic at all, but it was the desire of the Freemasons to overthrow the monarchies, to weaken the church so that they could create their godless secular state that they want to establish. Now we've got it. That's where we are. You know?
Yeah, everywhere. You even see in Spain right now, they're not allowing public rosaries, and these guys are out there getting like clamped down on for having public rosaries in Spain by their socialist government.
Because if you have an elite, this literally is city of God versus city of man.
Yeah.
If you understand Augustine and what he was writing about with city of God, city of man, that's where we are. The Freemasons and the communists have come together to create the city of man and establish a new Babylon. Okay, avoiding Babylon, but we have a new Babel. And we're trying to build that new cultural tower to get to heaven through naturalism. Naturalism is the idea that we as individuals can save ourselves. We don't need to be saved from above. Okay. So going to the 1920s, of course, you had Vladimir Lenin. He was running the show. After Lenin came Stalin. Stalin actually had both Lenin and Trotsky murdered. He took over. And what Stalin wanted to do was to infiltrate the seminaries and to put communist plants in the seminaries.
Stalin had been a seminarian himself, actually.
That's right. That's right.
Was he?
Yeah.
And Orthodox
was an altar boy.
Yeah, he was.
So this goes to like the Bella Dodd stuff, right? The conversation she had with Fulton Sheen, where she said that they had actually already infiltrated a lot of the priesthood at that point, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah.
And what, like, all right. So when you texted me, you were like, I want to discuss the nature of Marxism. What did you mean by discuss the nature of it?
So here's what people don't understand about Marxism. Everybody thinks that Marxism, that Karl Marx was writing about a new financial system or a new economic system to live by. He wasn't. The entire Communist Manifesto is about creating perpetual revolution. We want to break down society. We want to break down the system. And he basically used the workers of the day because the workers were legitimately oppressed. He just took that as a vehicle for imposing a revolutionary ideology that you always have to rebel against authority. This is what, if you understand the demonic, why the devil does what he does, the devil rebels because he rebels. You see, he doesn't want. Yeah,
Marxism is just Hegelianism.
It's the Hegelian dialectic. The Hegelian dialectic, thesis plus antithesis equals synthesis. So if you have this idea, let's call it pro-life, and you have this other idea, let's call it pro-abortion, and in the middle you have, well, if you want an abortion, you can have one. And if you don't, well, you don't have to. So they're looking for that middle road, but that middle road was never the solution. It's always the fulcrum. It's that tension point that's going to cause people to argue back and forth all day long so that you at one point have the majority of the people on one side, but you never want to give them it all. You need that tension. So you're going to let them go as far as they can. Then you're going to snap the thread so that then rush everybody all the way over to the other side. Now everybody who has power is on the left side of the issue. And it's just that back and forth and back and forth.
So this goes down to like every argument you see happening in the media. This is why they want a control of the media so much, because they get to set the conversation and keep us arguing between these same issues. Even the stupid I hate even discussing the trans thing because it's just like everybody's discussing it,
Yeah.
but they want you discussing it because they want you, they want to put the fanatics on the one side and then the fanatics on the other, and then they want somebody to come to some reasonable middle on this thing. And it really is how they set the tone for every conversation we're having in our society.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. And it's even more insidious because look at the fights that we have within our own church. We've got the two-party government system. That's one element. Here, if you want to understand, and this is your red pill moment. You ready for this?
Oh boy.
Everything is red versus blue. Everything. Everything. Star Wars, red versus blue lightsabers. Halo, red team versus blue team. Stratego, red pieces versus blue pieces. If you look at a map of the Americans versus the British, red coats versus blue coats.
Yeah.
Okay.
I made our thumbnail red and blue today too.
Yeah. So you start going red pill versus blue pill. All right. It's always red versus blue. And the reason for that is that they have to have two representatives that show that there is a dividing line between these two ideologies. They will never, ever, ever come together. One always has to oppress the other. And it's always going to be that way. And that's how it's always going to be. Yeah, Bloods versus Crips. Sure, why not?
Well, it goes into because Marxism at first was about a class issue, but now you see they're doing it with race, they're doing it with gender, they're doing it like they really do keep us in these constant battles, and especially in the media where you can easily write the person on the opposing side of the argument off as an other, and they do it to you as well. Right. And it really is a system of divide and conquer as well, because they always get to keep their narrative in place while we're fighting over these stupid things on the sidelines.
Divide and conquer, but also dehumanize, because as long as you're angry at somebody who is other, as you point out, then you can do whatever you want to them.
Yeah,
you can. If you dehumanize somebody, look at what happened in Rwanda during the 1990s. Okay. The Rwandan revolution, for months, one of the tribes had control of the airwaves, and they were constantly referring to this other tribe as cockroaches. Yeah. Cockroaches that needed to be squashed. And it was just the rhetoric, constant bombardment. And then when that fuse was lit, they went through and they slaughtered people with machetes, people that were their neighbors, people they went to school with, that they worked with. They slaughtered everyone, and they did so with not a care in the world. These aren't people that have ever killed someone before. They'd never killed anybody before.
But many were children's soldiers. I mean, they were teenagers.
Right. That's right. That's right.
If you don't see the way we're talking now and the dangers of it, how we speak about each other on the other side, as a comparison to what happened in Rwanda, or even a comparison what happens in the Spanish Civil War. In the Spanish Civil War, it's fascist versus communist, and you see that language happening now. It seems like a civil conflict is inevitable at this point in this country.
It's really trending that way. I mean, we're back to red versus blue, Democrat versus Republican, right? Mm-hmm. And the dividing line is so stark. And why is it so stark? Because there is a narrative that one side is going to, I'm trying not to get you kicked off of YouTube. Yeah. So let's say abscond with certain devices that allow you to choose your political side.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So there's that narrative, and that narrative it's real. People get really angry.
Trying to destroy democracy. They're going to take away your vote. They're going to
right. You're stealing from me. You're stealing my ability to have my person in power. And there's an anger. There's a tension. And what do? They go out and they rally. They protest. Those protests lead to violence. Look at the summer of 2020.
Yeah,
where you had whole buildings being burnt to the ground, cars on fire everywhere. My wife was like, Why is it every time they have a riot, they have to burn cars? What's that all about?
It's for the imagery.
Yeah, that's right.
Because the imagery of fires is so powerful, right?
Mhm.
You could go in and you can loot. Looting is a powerful image too, though. But looting and fires are two images that strike you, and you're just like, "Holy cow, we're at war right now!" Like when you see fire and cars in flames like that, it really, it's crazy. Some of the imagery that we saw in 2020, and we forget how recent that was, man. It really has gone by pretty quickly.
The uptown neighborhood of Minneapolis still isn't the same. I was just there over the weekend.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, look at Portland, Oregon. It looks like a third world country. It really does.
Yeah, even look what they did to us during the whole pandemic, man. Just the constant bickering with the masks and with that.
Yep.
I mean, everything really does boil down to this. Is there a way? I don't know how we get out of this, man. This is crazy.
That's why this really is the red pill moment, because once you see it, you can't not see it. And everything becomes an argument. Everything becomes almost like a life and death struggle, even over things that aren't. But the Marxist ideology is that you have to fight. You have to fight. You have to fight no matter what. I have to win on this issue.
The church is supposed to transcend these things, right? It's supposed to not be political, but we are in the most, I've never seen the church so political. It's crazy. You have a left and right within the church now. And it seems like the left is so dominant in every position of authority at this point.
Well, this is why the Catholic Church, in her wisdom, has condemned communism, socialism, and secret societies more than anything else in her entire history.
Yeah.
There are more condemnations of communism, socialism, and secret societies, and they're all tied together because they all come from the same root. And in 1948, the crowning achievement was when Pope Pius XII formally condemned and excommunicated ipso facto as apostates anyone who joined the Communist Party.
Yeah. Oh man.
It's a heavy topic. And it's something,
really is.
you know, and this is why I wanted to talk about it, because it's something that a lot of people don't understand. They, again, going back to what I started with, people tend to think, oh, Marxism, that's just Karl Marx. That's just the red flag with the hammer and sickle. That's just the Soviet Union or the Chinese, or they say, well, that's just an economic structure. And yeah, it hasn't worked yet, but on paper, it could work. And they just think about it in financial terms. They forget this is the most deadly ideology in the history of man.
So Robert's saying, don't forget about the Amish, because Amish is our code word for the people of the old covenant, because they are behind so many of those revolutions. I mean, it really,
or at least the individuals.
Yeah. We're not talking about every single one or anything, but
right.
if you listen to the Martyr Made podcast, he really gets into showing how, because of the pogroms and stuff like that, there were these systematic, almost government or sanctioned pogroms where they would go in and they would do horrific things to these Jewish communities, so that when they would find one of these revolutions to support, they would support them because they wanted anything but what they were dealing with. It really is. But when you talk, it's easy to say the Freemasons, but there is a very heavy Amish involvement in Freemasonry.
Oh, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the symbols that they use, why do they use an apron? Because they're referencing the builders back prior to the new covenant. So
it's all Kabbalah, basically.
It is. A lot of it actually is Kabbalah. But we have to be very careful about just castigating an entire people. And the reason that I say that, there's a difference between a people and an ideology.
Yes.
And a people, sure, they could be imbibed in an ideology. I mean, look at Americans. We have a very American idea about the way things ought to go. for ill or for good, whatever that is. The same thing with your Amish community. But if we're going to think about what we can actually prove, what we can condemn, you can condemn and prove the actions of individuals, or you can condemn and prove the actions of organizations when it's established that they have an agenda. Yeah. So when the Freemasons say, hey, we have this blueprint, we want to actually get a pope of our own making put on the throne of Peter, and this is how we're going to do it, which it says in the Alta Vendita. Well, then you can say, yes, there is a Masonic plot to overthrow the church. But if you have like a nationality where certain nationalities get together and they say, well, we're from this one country in the Middle East, and we're going to come up with a plan, and you can't say that everyone in that country is guilty.
No, yeah. Yeah, it's always a tricky thing to discuss, especially when a large majority of the people don't even have a clue what you're talking about. You know what I mean? It's like you really, you just, it's the ideology that's why I think there's this whole debate even about is condemning Zionism anti-Semitism. And I hate the word anti-Semitism to begin with, but
well, the Arabs are Semites.
That's what I mean. It's such a silly word, but no, like you can condemn the idea of Zionism because Zionism it's an ideology. It's not synonymous with Judaism. It's a very specific brand of Judaism.
But what we can say, and I was talking to a priest about this the last time I went out to give a talk, and he was very surprised by my answer. I said, what you have to realize is that the modern Jewish religion is the religion of Antichrist. And he kind of sat back. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, what did the Jews reject? Do any modern Jews accept Christ? No. Do they reject Christ? Yes.
Like by definition.
By definition, they are the religion of Antichrist. They are still looking for a Messiah. What was it that our Lord said to them? You will reject. I came in my own name and you rejected me. Another will come in his own name and him you will accept. This has been commonly accepted by the church fathers as a prophecy about the Antichrist, how they will accept and embrace the Antichrist as the new Messiah, as their Messiah, which is why they want to rebuild the temple, which is why it's always been prophesied that once the temple is rebuilt a third time, that is going to be the advent of Antichrist. They are literally the religion of Antichrist.
Yeah, they're trying to build. This whole movement is to try and build that third temple.
Right, which is why Zionism has to be opposed.
Yeah. Yeah, we can probably talk a little more freely over in locals, but okay, Michael, how can people donate to their parishes in a safe way? Huh?
I said, yeah, properly, like safely.
Yeah, properly, so they don't have to worry about. Obviously, when you get that second collection coming around, especially if it's for the CCHD, I would say it's water. I would say that second collection always be wary of. Pay very close attention to what that second collection is coming around for. But when you're giving to your parish, what are some specific ways to give to your parish that is going specifically to something?
Well, now that I see you drinking that vodka, it's hard for me to take you seriously. But the easiest way to handle things really is to earmark your funds. As you indicated at the very beginning, if you want to go to the priest and say, Father, I want to pay the electric bill this month, pay the electric bill. Or if you write on a check in the collection plate, say specifically for grounds upkeep, or for, you can earmark it for anything that the parish needs. You can even ask the pastor, Father, can you list out everything that the parish needs to pay for on a regular basis so that I can earmark my funds for those particular things? And that means that my money will not be taxed by the bishop, and that money eventually won't find its way into the USCCB's coffers. And that's the easiest way to handle that.
All right. Yeah, guys, look, I just don't see how we can in good conscience contribute to something like the CCHD when you know your money's going to things like this. A problem some trad parishes are having is so many people are only donating to the building fund that they can't take care of everything they need to from the general fund. Something to think about. Yeah, I would suggest specifically speaking to your pastor and asking him what he needs, because the building fund can only, you can only build so much towards that.
Well, there's another thing that other people have been doing where they set up a separate bank account for the parish. It's run by a lay council, so the lay council can say, these are the funds that we want to distribute and pay for things from the parish. If the priest needs something, he can just go to effectively what is effectively a slush fund, but just go to the council and say, hey, here's what I need money for. If you could strike a check for this bill or for that bill, or help me to pay for this or that, then that would be what it's used for. And that's something that I've heard.
The diocese does take a percentage from every parish too, though, right?
Yeah, but if you create a separate bank account that is created by a council of people that has nothing to do with the priest or the parish, then the bishop can't touch that money.
Yeah. So, all right, we are going to jump over to locals, guys. We're going to discuss the state of the Catholic apostolate. Maybe we'll discuss the Amish a little bit over there without worrying so much about our language, because people I don't know. People get on us saying that like we're afraid to touch that subject. We're just afraid to touch it on YouTube. It's a touchy subject to get into on YouTube. We'll say anything that needs to be said, though. So we're going to jump over there. We're going to discuss maybe church militant. We'll get into the coalition of canceled priests a little bit, and some other things we're going to talk about. So
before we go over there, Michael, is there what do you want to promote while we're still here?
Oh yeah, of course. Definitely your YouTube channel for sure.
Yeah, I mean, come over to the Lepanto Institute, lepantoin.org. Take a look at our charity reports list. Go to our donate page. We are completely donor driven. We don't have any grants or foundations that are keeping us up. It's just the generous donations of individuals like you. So please come over. It would be great if you could help us out. Any little bit counts.
Okay. And Molly was saying she's too cheap to go to locals. If you catch locals on the live stream, it's free. It's only after the live stream ends that we put it behind a paywall. So Molly, if you wanted to go over there, you could watch right now for free. It's people that catch on the replay, they got to pay, because then we put it behind a paywall after the live stream. So, all right, guys, thank you for checking us out. We're going to go over there. We're going to hang. We're going to get into some dirt. And, we'll see you guys on Thursday with Eric Salmons, where we're going to be doing the Tradvent police.
Oh. Where I get to come down hard on Anthony putting up his Christmas tree.
Yeah, I put my Christmas tree up already. I haven't put my lights outside up yet.
Anthony, are you co-sleeping with your Christmas tree?
Oh, no.
If I get into another fight with Rob, I'll be co-sleeping by myself. My wife won't even sleep with me. She was mad at me for having that fight.
Oh, was she?
She's like, I can't believe you're fighting with Rob. What's wrong with you?
Do you get a call from your mom? I know your mom loves me.
Yeah. Everybody, Eddie reached out to me. I had a bunch of people reach out to me, make sure everything was all right over here. So, all right, guys, we'll see you Thursday, where we're gonna make fun of the Tradvent police. We're gonna call that episode. So we'll see you guys on Thursday.